from that. That's going. Stand by. Looks like about 20 seconds of that. There we go. I just have to shut that window. All right. And I'm going to start recording here. Recording locally. Hello, everybody. My name is Stuart Volkow, and I am with the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination at the University of California, San Diego. And my guest today is Ben Kovales. He is the Chief Marketing Officer and one of the co-founders of Art AI. And this was founded in 2019, and it is a company that generates unique, one-of-a-kind artworks using algorithms. And he has created a marketplace for this art. And this is a particular interest to us at the Clarke Center because we are very interested in the topics of machine learning, artificial intelligence. And one of the research projects that we sponsor is about art and empathy, looking at the neuroscience of empathy, how it works in the brain, and the impact that art has on it. So, Ben, hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being with me this morning. We'll do this sort of as a discussion. I don't want to hammer you with questions. I want to kind of make a discussion out of it. But first, let's just get into the origin story of Art AI. And, you know, we don't have to kind of reiterate all the details, but you're a classic startup nation story. So I want to kind of get at it from that angle. This is you and your co-founders. Are they all Israelis?
Yes.
So tell us about that. So, you know, Israel, I have a fond place in my heart for Israel, and I have a fond place for Israeli startups. I've been involved in a few myself, and I did make the Startup Nation trip myself to find some startups, including one called Augury, which has become very successful. But tell us your startup story.
Wow, so that's great to hear. And I guess that I didn't have a chance to speak that much so far. So for anyone that didn't guess it, I'm in Israeli yet. Definitely they can guess it by your opening speech and definitely by my accent. And we have a very interesting story on how we started Art AI. And it came from two different fronts, kind of at the same time. So me and my co-founders, Eyal Fisher and Guy Chaimovich, who are both tech savvy and both coming from the Israeli high-tech industry, myself as well. We were bouncing ideas around opening up a startup of ourselves. For those who don't know that, it's kind of every Israeli dream, every Israeli person in his 20s dream to open up a startup, especially with his friends. And we really wanted the startup to include somehow neural networks. And it was really trendy, it was really cool, it really fascinated us. Especially Eyal, who is the CEO of the company and really had a lot of experience with it. And during that time, we're speaking about October 2018, we saw an amazing piece of PR news about the first ever AI-generated artwork that was sold at an auction. And I guess that some listeners already know about it. It's called The Portrait of Edmond de Bellamy, and it was sold at Christie's for $432,000. Which was a huge amount. Today, people are speaking in NFTs, so $432,000 is not a lot of money at all, but there it was like a really big deal. The whole world spoke about it, especially as even though the technology needed to create art using artificial intelligence was kind of there for quite a while, it wasn't really developed enough to make a bespoke art. And that was the first time that anyone saw that, and people were really amazed. And the funny thing is that when Eyal saw these PR news, he approached me, he showed it to me. Of course, I was amazed. But the next thing that he said that he believed that he could develop a way better, way more advanced algorithm capable of creating art with a far better, far more developed artistic capabilities, and not only to do that, but to be able to do that in scale. And at the time, I was VP of sales and marketing at an Israeli IT company, and I was experienced with selling products online, different languages, different geos, and basically managing large teams that were doing just that. So I told him, if we were able to create such an algorithm, we will open up a store, we will open up a company, and we will start selling these artworks under the premise that we don't have to sell each artwork for $100,000. We can sell each artwork for $100, and we can make countless of them, and we can make original art, one-of-a-kind art, available to basically everyone that wants it, not only the people that have the Christie's money. So these two factors coming together, and obviously having Guy who was working at the time in a famous Israeli cybersecurity company and had a lot of knowledge about the technological knowledge for building the infrastructure needed to establish the company that can generate and sell artworks in scale. We decided to go for it and started from there.
So did you guys meet in your IDF service, like a lot of Israeli startups?
Actually, no. So I know Eyal since kindergarten. So basically before I can remember myself, and I know Guy since before high school.
All right. Yeah. Are you coming to us from Israel now?
What was that?
Where are you now?
So I'm right now at Tel Aviv. By the way, usually we're located in London. So we started everything in kind of half of it was in Tel Aviv, half of it was in London, and we all moved to London a few months back. I came back just in time for this whole thing that is going on right now in Israel. And both of my co-founders right now in London.
How did it affect you? Did you spend a lot of time in a shelter? How often did you have to run out of your apartment or run into your bathroom?
Well, it's like more closer to the bathroom, I guess. Several times. I have to admit, being here in Tel Aviv, I guess that people are speaking about it, but Tel Aviv is very much protected, and we have the amazing Iron Dome, which is great. And most of the missiles are being intercepted way above. So, like if it was in a relevant time, I would do the extra mile and like go to this hallway. If it was in the middle of the night, just keep on sleeping.
That's amazing. Well, that's another conversation. But you just said a couple of.
If you want to speak controversy, we can speak AI and art, or we can speak all of these.
We'll put a pin in that for now.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother thing. But you said a couple of things I want to just drill down on. You claim that Art AI is making original pieces of art that are unique. You've created this wonderful marketplace, which is at artaigallery.com. And there's some very impressive looking things.
Thank you.
But these are created by algorithms. However, algorithms need to be trained, right? So you start with a seed image of some kind, and it iterates on this seed. So it's not alone, right? I mean, it doesn't do this in complete out of a vacuum. The algorithms need something to start with. So are they really, do you think they're really unique things, or are they just iterations of something that was made by a human?
That's a great question. And the answer is that there are unique things. And I guess that to answer this question, I need to go back to the beginning of what you were starting to ask about, starting with a seed image, as we're not starting with a seed image. We are starting basically with a sequence of random numbers, a big matrix of numbers that are being fed into our, and I guess that I need to explain a bit about the system that we are using in order to create the designs that we're creating, which is also kind of split into two different parts. But basically we're feeding a seed of numbers, random numbers, not an image, that is being translated into an image by the neural network of one of the AIs that take part in this process. And depending on the formation of weights in its neural network, that basically, I guess that most of the listeners are familiar with some machine learning aspects, but for those who don't, this classical huge circles and lines image that everyone knows. So the formation of these weights are going to determine how this seed is going to be translated into something that will create a visual design.
So you don't feel like the seed images are part of the result?
Okay, so speaking about the still images, I guess that you're referring to the data that we're using in order to train our critic algorithm, which is a different algorithm. So maybe we should take a second and talk a bit about GANs, about generative adversarial network.
Well, and before I get to that, one of the things that I really find interesting is you talk about you have 15 AI artists.
Yeah.
And they have all these interesting names, okay? So each of these, quote, artists, which I kind of think of like art robots of some kind, they have a style, right? They each have a unique style. And they, you know, one's very abstract, one's very, the one that fascinates me the most are the images that look like old masters. It looks like drunk old masters made these.
That sounds like Gloombot that you're speaking about.
Yeah, well, what's that one called?
Gloombot, I think.
Yeah, it's people. I mean, it results in people.
Yeah.
And they're a little askew, right? They're a little off. They're not quite, you know, you look at them and go, that's kind of a strange. It's not exactly
very unusual. Yes,
it's unusual. You know, it's like a Rembrandt on acid or something. But nevertheless, if you look at it, you would go, that was painted in the style of a traditional portraiture. So tell us a little bit about how you came up with these 15 algorithmic artists.
Okay, so there are now, should I say, 15 retired algorithmic artists, and they are not creating new art anymore. And we're going to introduce a lot of new AI artists very soon. We're still going to upload a few artworks for each of them as they're already queued, they're already prepared, but with the new version of the algorithm, we have new AI artists. So and as you can see, the distinguishment in the different style of each artist is quite visual. It's right up there. You can see that. And this is not arbitrary. There's a reason for that. And the reason for that is because each of the specific style of each of the AI artists is located on a different place on kind of, and I'll have to probably shorten the explanation here, but if you can imagine a map that occupies a lot of different styles and a lot of different visual representations of what we as humans see as art, they're pretty far from each other. Of course, it depends on the angle that you're looking at. And each AI artist is kind of creating art in its own domain. And of course, you have these combinations. This combination occur quite a lot, but it was very important for us to segment different styles. So we will be able to, first of all, have collectors aim themselves into a specific style that they like and make it easier for them to browse. And for people to see that there is some sort of resemblance to what they know, to what is familiar with them with the world of art. You don't just Google art and just look at paintings. You look for specific styles. You have a specific taste in art, and you want to see more of these. And we wanted to give people the option to do that. And this is why we decided that we need to have AI artists, and we need to have some sort of a map that allows us to segment different styles into different places.
So you were going to get a little bit into the algorithm. So in my world, the overview is AI, of course, is a giant collection of different technologies. You know, it's not just one, really. It's kind of a misnomer. Machine learning is another subcategory. Neural networks is another subcategory. So you're using a lot of these different techniques. One, of course, is called generated adversarial networks, where you pit one algorithm against another, so to speak, the critic, the generator and the critic, which I think is very interesting. So is that still your approach, or are you now sort of creating your own blended algorithms?
It's a combination. So in the beginning, it was a large part of our approach, and now it's a pretty small part of our approach. It is still the basis that we need in order to have everything going on. But the algorithm that we have today, even the part that needs GANs in order to generate new design is completely different than what we had in the beginning. So right now, because of our scale and because of all of the insights that we were able to learn during our time of operation, and we already sold thousands of different unique AI artworks to people from all over the world, and mostly for Americans. And we were able to learn so much from that, and still learning, that we were actually able to use the inputs, to use the insights, the engagements that people are having while they're in our gallery, in order to make the algorithm better and better and better. And by this point, this actually, I think, accounts for even a bigger part than the basic gun technology that we were using in the beginning, because there is kind of a limit to what you can do simply by ordinarily using guns. But as soon as you involve people, as you involve actual human beings that are viewing the gallery and have a chance to engage with it, then you have no limit at all. It just continues to change all of the time. And you have a chance to see people reaction on designs that are a result of reactions of other people that saw that earlier. And it's simply a never-ending cycle.
Well, one of the things that I've heard you say or write about is you're trying to create art that gives people an emotional response. So one of the things I'm really curious about, have you figured out what that is? Have you figured out an algorithmic trick that evokes certain types of emotions?
I think that so I think that yes, but I'm not sure that we were the one that figured it out. It just happens. So one of the things that we were able to learn, and funny enough, it's one of the things that you mentioned, and that's probably not a coincidence, is that the funny looking faces, the unusual looking faces, really grabs your attention. It's very hard to skip them as soon as you see them. And you also get a different reaction, whether if you know it is an AI or if you don't. And this was not always the case. And right now, by the way, it's actually, again, deviating away from them. But in the beginning, the unusual skewed faces, you said a little skewed, some of them are very skewed, were a bit more, let's say, proper faces. The problem with that, these faces were not really interesting. So it makes sense to hang a portrait at your home of someone that you admire or of yourself, someone that you know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to hang a portrait in your home, just the face of someone that you don't know, a regular face. Of course, if you know that it was created by artificial intelligence, it's a great story, it's a great conversation making, but it kind of misses the point. But when the face is a bit unusual, it's very hard to look the other way. You have to say something, you have to see something. And other than the fact that people are really into it, by the way, myself as well, my favorite type of art is the art that is really unusual and it's like nothing else. It really attracts the attention of the people. It kind of forces you to have a reaction. And I think that a lot of our customers, and I do my best to speak with as many of them that I can, are really into that specific engagement, that specific emotion as well. They want to see the initial reaction when you show something in artwork. It's very unusual. It gets them speaking. It gets them thinking. It gets them to feel something. And the harder feeling that they have, the more they speak about and the more they feel connected. And then you reveal that this artwork was actually created by artificial intelligence. And that leads the conversation to a whole different area.
So this, just to pursue this a little bit more, some other of your artists, the soon to be retired ones and the new ones coming up, are very abstract. So if you were to look at one, I mean, you would have to be an expert to tell me that wasn't done by, a famous abstract artist, because it is clearly in that style. And then you have things that are more like expressionism. So whether it was done by an expressionist painter in pointillism or something similar would be very hard to tell. You could tell by looking at brushwork and so forth. Obviously, it doesn't have the actual paint. Although now with the G-clay methods and certain other reproduction methods, you could probably even simulate that, right? What about those categories? How do you feel about that? Is that a different category of emotional evocation that comes from those? In some ways, I feel like those are more realistic simulations of real artists than the faces.
I agree with you that this is like a different part of what we're making in a sense. But especially because I think that the people that are being attracted into the more abstract designs sometimes have different motives. So you have the people that are fascinated about the technology, and because they understand the technology, it's kind of creating a bias in what they're looking for. Not necessarily now they're looking for the most mesmerizing design that speaks to them the most. They are looking for some sort of a combination that screams, this is me, this is what I think about technology, this is what I want to show the world, other than having a beautiful decorative piece on your wall. And so the other part are browsing through the gallery, and we have thousands of artworks, and we need to have a lot of artworks because we sell each of them only once. And they're simply looking for the first thing that catches them, that catches their eye. So people that I know are constantly sending me messages, I want this one, I want this one, I want this one, because they're looking at the feed, and suddenly something many times abstract comes up. The day it comes up, okay, I want this. I've been looking for something that speaks to me, that will fit well in my room. This is the one. And we're not selling artworks in Israel, so that's not really helpful. Then they're never getting anything.
Well, maybe we'll come up with a bit of a research project here of trying to assess what people are looking for and why they chose certain things, and correlate that to the algorithm. That might be an interesting thing to pursue. You sell these as individual unique pieces with a chain of title, with attribution, right? So when you buy a piece of your art, you get a certificate of authentication. And when you get the actual physical print, is that the only one you of that is sold, or is there a series of them, like prints? How does that work?
That's the only one. So
that's the only one. Okay.
Only one. And as soon as you make a purchase, immediately it is being removed. It is out of stock. We have one of one for everything. You can still see it. It's going to the sold collection. No one can buy it, but you can still view it. You can still show your friends if you like.
I see. And do you use G-Clay to reproduce these? How are they printed?
We don't. At the moment, it's print on canvas, very high quality canvas, very high quality ink. But at the moment, it's print on canvas.
So let's talk about NFT for a second.
Sure.
It's sort of like you did this before there was NFT, and I want to ask you how the NFT revolution is affecting. Are you going to implement that?
Okay, so that's a sensitive area. We're working on several different approaches.
Okay.
And big operations. And I guess that they're going to be more public in the future. This is not something that we're incorporating in Art AI Gallery, definitely not. We were kind of approaching this trend before it existed, even though NFTs are there for a few years, but let's say before it went viral, in a different way. So we're bringing the collectors that want to have the actual bespoke piece in their home. So take this technological piece, which is so very digital, making it into a bespoke piece of art and hang it in their home. But we did make a very interesting discovery a bit before this NFT bubble started to grow. So because we are producing our own designs, not like other marketplaces, we are not, we have exclusivity for our own designs. So we are able to provide the actual digital file of the artwork that we're selling. So, and it also connects to your question, when you're buying an artwork, not only that you're getting a certificate of authenticity and the bespoke canvas to your home, you're also getting a file, digital file, only you can access it, of the 7K resolution of the design that you purchased. And as long as you're not using it for commercial use, you can do with it whatever you want. And we kind of did it because we could, and we wanted to see, we're still a startup, we're not only in e-commerce, and we wanted to see if this is going to react some kind of a reaction. And almost 40%
Did you feel like you got scooped a little bit when the NFT multi-million-dollar NFT auctions were going on? Because you
Oh
always
no,
cite, that there was that one piece of digital art that's auctioned off for $143,000. Now you've got, what was it, $38 million for the piece of digital art. You
no,
must
no.
have felt a little bit like you got scooped.
I guess a bit, but for different reason. I felt that because it was immediately clear to me what needs to be done in order to trigger such a sale. And it's definitely not only about the art. It's about the PR, and it's about kind of the tradability and the buzz that you're able to create around it. And suddenly you have an NFT bubble, and you see huge sales, and people think it happened immediately, but people don't speak about the huge amount of efforts that went into making it happen, efforts that are everything but the art and but the technology. And that at the end of the day, when you're trading, you're buying a piece of art like an art trader, uh, believing that it is going to be worth more, so someone else is going to buy it. But with the art that we all know, classical art, conceptual art that we all know, there's huge value because you hang it on your wall. You already pretty much you purchase it from someone that you know that is already worth something, and it's really beautiful, and you're waiting for someone else to buy. With NFTs, this was like this hyper growth kind of skipped the necessity of the design being extremely special or extremely extravagant, as long as it has enough buzz, and it
I
could
see.
be unique. It could be like a part from other designs to kind of, have a look at the story. But that's not all of the NFTs. You can see amazing NFTs that had huge amount of works behind of them, people that are taking years of their life and putting them as an NFTs, and you have people that respect that and buy the NFTs because of that. So I guess there are two groups, but a lot of what we hear about in the media is for the first group, people that took this art trading to hyper growth, to the extreme. And by the way, it's extremely interesting to see that because it was very difficult to forecast. So about NFTs, I guess I can speak a lot about them, but tip of the iceberg, probably not the most popular thing to say about NFTs, but that's my approach.
You're in there. You're in. It's a bubble in the category of looking at it as kind of a speculative investment that may be a bubble.
Yeah, so I guess that I need to be careful when calling it a bubble because
Okay.
um I'm more pointing at like the fact that
Well,
it's so surprising. It's surprising everyone, and it's so hard to know. At this point, I don't know what other surprises we're going to see in the NFT
well,
world.
your work is reasonably priced, but how, the range of prices is between like $40-$50 and a couple $100. What's the range, and how do you price them?
Yeah, so you can say that right now we're pricing them by weight, and there's a good reason for that. So you can get an artwork as cheap as $59 and go and ranging up to $159. And from time to time, we're making different variations that cost a bit differently. But in general, it's very important for us to keep a very affordable price range because one of the first things that we wanted to do, and I kind of touched it as part of your first question, we wanted people to be able to own this art, and we were aiming for exposing this new type of art to as many people as we could, and not going to the direction that others went to, and like trying to trigger
You want to make it
huge.
affordable.
Yeah.
So you're not doing it based upon some kind of a popularity contest. You're kind of actually looking at the intrinsic value and the costs involved.
Yes.
So just
That's
to
a
go
big part.
backtrack a second, you said there's 7K resolution.
Yeah.
And you're inkjet printing these things?
Yes, so we have printing partners all across the world, and several of them in the United States.
I see.
And we're using only really high quality materials. So doesn't matter where you are in the world, you're going to receive the exact same product using, of course, archival ink. And this is something that even if you're someone that knows a bit about canvases and canvas art, you're definitely going to be able to appreciate it.
Okay. But it's basically an inkjet. You're using inkjet technologies, ultra high resolution inkjet technologies.
Yes.
All right. Let's put the tech aside for a sec. And I want to get into the more philosophical areas, which are very interesting. One of your quotes is, "You don't need a soul to make art."
Oh,
So
yeah.
I want to drill down on that a little bit and challenge that. You also think that you can actually, and on your website, there's a place for artists to submit their artwork. And you say, we're a tool. We're going to allow artists to make more of their art. I can't imagine that this is not going to put artists out of work, right? When I go to a gallery or am I able to buy for $150 something that looks really great, as opposed to going to my local art fair or my local art gallery where there's paintings which sell for, thousands of dollars, and I can't distinguish between them in terms of the visual qualities. Now, I might be able to distinguish between the brush strokes or the paint that was applied or something like that, but I often think that maybe even things that are decorative, or even an artist like Mondrian. If you look at Mondrian's, they are all very similar. Murau's are all very similar. I almost think that they were using an algorithm, right? They had their own personal algorithms. A lot of artists had that, right? They had one successful style, unlike Picasso, because Picasso, he ran the gamut. There's now getting into art history. So how can you say that? Isn't this going to change what is viable for a human artist?
It's going to change the art world, but it's definitely not going to replace human art. And I can address this question or this statement from all sorts of direction. But fortunately, we already spoke about part of it. And there are different motives for people to purchase art. And what we're doing now basically is we are adding another option. We are using technology in order to add a layer to what we know today as art. And this art, by the way, if you ask someone, will tell you is still created by humans, because humans were the one that created the algorithms, and humans were the one that inspected the output of the algorithms and made changes in order to account for artifacts, or to understand how we can be absolutely sure that every new artwork that comes out is completely unique, and do all of that. And you can say that because of that, every artwork is largely affected by thousands of people that are viewing it and are engaging with it, that it's in some sense even more human than what we know as regular art that is created by one artist. We can say all sorts of things, but my main point is, because of the motive, because of different reasons for people buying art, as long as we continue, as the future arrives and new technologies or even other things that are not about technologies are being introduced into the art world, the place that classic art, the art that we knew, the art that we loved growing up, is going to be a more dominant part of the art world for us. And it's the same thing. So I'm a gamer, and I like to go back and play some old games that I experienced as a child, and I'm doing that for years. Every few years, I go back into games that I grew up on, and I always feel the same, this amazing feeling of nostalgia that's coming back to something that I really missed, and they have a warm place in my heart.
So maybe the art, many of the artists of the future, the signature on the art is the engineer, right? The algorithm designer that tuned the algorithm to create that. Will that become will that be the bespoke author of the art?
I believe so, but I believe so because of what we intend to do with this tool. And you mentioned that we think of it as a tool, and we do, because this is coming to enhance human art. This is coming to take digital artists that are creative by nature, there are so many of them, and allowing them to use a new tool, similarly to how musicians started using a synthesizer in the 80s to create new type of art now using AI. So we all love art at Art AI. We're big tech savvy, but we're also enthusiastic about art. But actual digital artists that are doing that from since they wake up till they go to sleep are so creative and the potential they can have using AI as part of their work is simply endless. So whatever we were able to do, the thousands of artwork we were able to produce during our time of operation since 2018, it's going to be nothing when compared to digital artists using this tool to create completely new stuff. And when you have so many artists using that, yeah, you can sign on the art the same way that an artist that is using a synthesizer to create a new song, because it is a part of the artist, but this artist is using technology. You can say soulless technology, but that's what he's using.
So now I want to challenge you on another thing here about the history of this. There's been computer art. I sent you an example of what was cited as the first bit of computer art in 1964, which was simple geometric patterns that were algorithmically generated by mathematical formula. And I was impressed by my first exposure to digital art at the 1984 SIGGRAPH. That was the first SIGGRAPH I went to. So SIGGRAPH, the special interest group in computer graphics by the Association of Computing Machinists, ACM, has been going on. The SIGGRAPH art show has been going since 1981. Computer artists in film and TV and visual effects have been working to create photorealistic visual art in animation since then. What's different about what you're doing? Is this just an extension of that? One of the tools that I used many years ago is called Bryce, right? Kai Kraus, one of the creators of Photoshop. And I understand that what you're doing is not a filter. You know, it's not like a Snapchat filter where you're just really overlaying or modifying an image. It's much more complex than that. But isn't it similar to, the digital art that we see in visual effects or the computer art that's been, around for decades? What is different about yours?
You did use like the key word here that this is not a filter. This is something that is being created from scratch. And I'll try to account for, like, to regard most of the things that you just mentioned, because there are so many important points, and I wish that I'll be able to address them all. So humans perceive aesthetics mostly, or very very big part of it, through patterns. We like patterns. This is a crucial part of human development, and there's a good reason why we vision patterns or we vision aesthetics to include patterns. And maybe this was also one of the reasons that people were more attracted into the same basically art was created by a computer, not by a person. This symmetry. But what we're doing right here has two stages. The first of them is truly being inspired by things that we know, because we have one of the AIs that is learning about human art and is being inspired by human art. It doesn't copy and paste anything. It learns, it is being inspired. And that's basically like the neural network trying to mimic a human mind. That's like a huge exaggeration to make this actual comparison, because it's so far from it, but that's what we're trying to achieve. And basically, this critic is judging the creation that it gets from the artist AI based on what it learned from human art. So nothing new here. Same way that you can view human art and then you can judge if something is similar to it and has the same artistic elements. The critic is doing the same thing. But the difference here is that the artist never actually sees that. You need to get kind of vague outputs from the critic and translate them to make something different the next time. Kind of like evolution, not necessarily the change that is going to make is going to be a good change. And we see that when we're reaching a limit, when we're reaching like a diminishing return limit of how the iteration between each training session, not necessarily are doing changes that are effective. They're going back and forth. So there is some element of randomness in that if we're looking at the whole picture at the end of the day, is bringing this process into something that we see as very visually appealing.
Well, you're talking about another aspect of AI, which is genetic algorithms, right? I mean, genetic algorithms use that kind of evolutionary modality to evolve something.
Yeah, and you kind of get that naturally when you have two different AIs that are working together, because not necessarily each AI is like knows at all time what it's going to get. It's kind of surprised. That's the whole point, because they're fighting with each other. They're adversaries. They're trying to trick each other. And basically, every time that the critic, which is every time, doesn't give the lowest possible score to the artist, it means that he did something wrong. It's
I
kind of
see.
surprised because of it. And that has to trigger some sort of a change. But that's
So,
only one part. Yeah.
so now that you've got a couple of years of experience doing this, have you come to any conclusions or maybe views about what's different about human creativity, human imagination? So we call ourselves the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination, making a distinction between creativity and imagination. Imagination being the spark, being the impetus, creativity being more of the implementation. What is human? What is exclusively human, if anything? Or maybe there isn't anything that's exclusively human.
That's I think one of the best questions that I've heard lately. That's a really hard one. And I don't think that I can properly answer this question, because I'm surprised all of the time, and I've seen new creations. And if you look at NFTs, you can see creations that people have been creating for years now. They didn't necessarily know what to do with them, and suddenly there's a platform for it. And you see mesmerizing stuff like I never thought about that, I never thought about that, and I never thought about that. So I can say that I'm some sort of an expert in determining what was created by an AI or not. So I can know that it was created by a human, but I could never imagine that before. And when you're speaking about AI, I think that one of the first times that I saw a creation that was made by an AI was related to the automotive world. And we were as like a humankind, we were trying to discover a better way to design a car chassis that will be strong yet light and aerodynamic. And the AI came up with a design that is filled with holes. And it was kind of impossible for a human to design that. It was such a weird design. It was more of an engineering change, other than like a thinking change. So that was completely AI made. And I think that a human could have never thought about that, because not because it lacked the imagination, it lacked the brain capabilities of designing something like that. You need to have a computer in order to understand that this is effective and that this makes sense. And this will also be like one chunk of chassis that is not going to fall apart because you placed too many holes, because you couldn't remember that hole number 16,500 is located in a
Sure.
problematic place.
Sure.
So maybe that will be the limit, but this limit is so technical. I cannot like envision a barrier to actually human imagination. I
But
think
that
that
also
there's
reminds me of the world of the field of biomimetics, right? Where you're using computers to mirror or mimic natural occurring patterns that you couldn't, a human being couldn't, recreate that without the aid of a computer. And
that's a
a lot
great
of
point.
designs have been successful, like heat exchangers and architectural structures that are mimicked from nature. But
Indeed so. And I've seen a very interesting piece of information about I think they're called mud crabs, and they are kind of like the most ancient crab out there, more similar to a scorpion. And they're so ancient that their immune system is different than any other immune system that we know. And the special thing about it is that it kind of blocks bacteria in a different way than how the immune system of most of the organisms work.
what's it called?
And I think it's called a mud crab. I'm not sure
I
about
gotta
it.
look that up.
And if they have blue blood, the blood is actually blue. And the immune system is so important and so unique then we need to use the extraction from their blood in order to be better in identifying defected batch of new drugs that we want to get approved. And in the past, you had to use rabbits in order to check these drugs. And now you can have not a synthetic, but like an actual living organism helping you with that. And it's like 1,000 times more effective than using rabbits. And
this kind of begs the question that you actually feel that there will be new forms of art that we've not yet conceived of that is going to come out of this. Like, what do you see for your company? It's so young, and yet it's still it's gotten so much success so early. What comes next? Do you feel like completely new forms of art are going to be discovered?
Yes. So other than new forms of art being discovered, and we spoke about this in the beginning as well, you can already take this AI art and very easily distribute it into 15 different AI artists, and we're going to have way more in the future. And asking about where we're heading next, we're heading towards personalization, and that's a very relevant topic for now, because in a few weeks we're going to come up with a new system, a new interface that is going to allow everyone to be a very big part of making their own AI-generated artwork. And that's going to be through a questionnaire, a very intuitive questionnaire with the goal of understanding your own personal taste in art, your preferred way of expressing your creativity by a list of questions that at the end is going to generate a list of completely new art that was never seen before based on your preference. So it's going to be a feed, and you're going to go through this feed and you're going to check the art that you like the most. And the feed is going to adjust while you're doing that. So you're going to go through some sort of a process with yourself, with the help of the AI, in order to determine what is the perfect art piece for you. And it's going to be determined by where you want to hang this art or how you're feeling at the moment. But it's going to be you with yourself making new art using AI that is personalized for you. So for us, this is the place where we're heading to next.
So do you think that we can pass the art Turing test at this point?
Oh, I definitely think so. And you know what? To the extent that even though I'll probably be able to determine which was created by an AI and which not, but I'm only able to do that because I keep on looking on the new batches of art that were created. If I'm not looking at it for a month and then I need to judge, I'm not going to be able to.
Well, this is a fascinating area, especially to folks that are affiliated with the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination, and the future and the speculative future that we often work in here. And I want to make sure that everybody knows the URL, which is AIArtGallery.com.
So it's www.artaigallery.com, or search Art AI Gallery on Google, and you'll reach right to the gallery.
I'll put the graphic in there as well. And are there any final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with, either about your company or about your philosophy of art?
Yeah, so fortunately, we covered most of it. It is always very important for me to, and when I have this opportunity, this stage, by the way, thank you so much for it, to approach a large number of people to kind of emphasize that this is a natural process of us using technology in order to enhance and to add additional layers into something that we know for many, many years. But the fact that we're using technology in order to make this change doesn't mean that this is some sort of a one in a lifetime thing or is going to change the rules of the game, because so many changes been occurred throughout the years. And this is not the last change that we're going to see in the art world. There are going to be more. And all of these changes are great. They're amazing because it means that we're adding more and we're simply increasing our options. And this is something that's happening all over the world, not only in the art world. People want more options and people have more distinct styles and individualism is becoming a bigger part, and this is simply a part of this process.
It may be that some of these works end up becoming pivotal, and they can be pointed to as that was the start of a certain trend and ended up becoming very valuable. That I always wonder about when I visit like Art Basel, which I love. I love Art Basel in Miami because I'm always fascinated by things I've never seen before, combinations, multimedia, even photography. That there's even things that I thought I'd seen every kind of photograph, and yet there's always something that I haven't thought of. And I wonder, right? I wonder if this will become an investment, if there are certain styles that you come up with that stick. And, even though they're machine generated and printed, maybe this does become an investment. Maybe do you feel like there are certain things that you could never get back to, and those will become valuable and appreciate over time?
Yeah, so we have a lot of comments that we're getting from our collectors that are asking specific questions. Some of them about what is the oldest possible artwork that I can find in the gallery, and some of them for really specific pieces of art that they want for themselves that were already purchased, and then we're making a connection with a different collector for them to seal a deal. But the more interesting insights we're getting are actually from the insights we're getting on social media, because we're publishing different type of arts and different designs, and we're getting different engagements. And some of the time something is going viral. Just it speaks to someone. No one could ever predict that, but it speaks to someone and it gets 20 times more engagements. And people are asking about it, and people are trying to purchase it, and people are sending email. How come this piece of art is not available? Because they reached it through a friend that sent them to them. They don't even know the backstory of it, and they don't understand how come there's only one. And so, yes, I'm sure that we're going to see some pivotal art pieces. And because we're creating so many of them, it is a matter of time until we see the first big hit of something that can be referred to as truly pivotal. Truly pivotal.
Fascinating. Ben Cavalis, founder, co-founder, chief marketing officer of Art AI. It's been great talking to you. Hang on for a second after I stop the recording. I really want to thank you for joining us this morning, and we're going to check in with you again in the near future.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.